Okay. Well, welcome to our first nutrition group for Premier U. We're excited to start these groups. We're going to start having these every month. So if you learned about this information, you either learned about it in office or maybe through the email blast you get from Premier U. We will continue to update that through those areas. So always look for that time and date. We're going to have different topics each month. If there's a specific topic that you want us to cover, we're open to ideas. So just let us know. I do want to introduce Megan Talkington. She's a registered dietitian. She joined the team a couple months ago. What we recognize at Premier U is that we are using, the GLP-1 medications as a tool towards people getting to their weight loss or just part of their healthcare journey. And we kept talking about, because we truly believe that nutrition is such an important part of that. And, the nurses and the nurse practitioner at all locations do a great job talking about it. But we really thought it was important to bring in a registered dietitian to come in and talk about and using GLP-1s, or even if you're not, maybe you're a maintenance and stepping off, what is the best way to fuel your body to feel your best? And so how we're going to run this group is that I'll be turning this over to Megan in just a second. She is going to, talk about the topic, which she'll introduce in a minute. You can keep your camera on or camera off, whatever your comfort level is. As you may have heard, the recording, this is being recorded. The reason why is so it can be a tool for someone that we come across who may be very interested in this topic, that we can share this with other patients. So feel free to keep your camera on or camera off. Megan's going to give us a great presentation at the end of that. If you have any questions along the way, please submit those in the chat. And then afterwards, I'll read those questions to Megan and we'll have a discussion about that. And then we'll wrap it up. So without further ado, take it away, Megan.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, I'm Megan Talkington. I'm a registered dietitian. I am also certified in obesity and weight management and a certified wellness practitioner. Let me share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Okay, let me make sure I can get this to run the slideshow. Okay, all right, so we're going to be talking about GLP-1 nutrition today. This is me, just introduced myself. Promoting Premier U, locations in Swansea, Marion, and South County. So the objectives of today are understanding the benefits. Sorry, give me 1 second. I have a screen in my view. Okay, apologize for that. We're going to understand the benefits of focusing on macronutrient balance to promote healthy weight loss. You're going to learn the importance of adequate energy intake, which includes calories, healthy fat, and lean protein, and becoming aware of the physical activity guidelines for Americans. Starting with GLP medications. GLP-1 medications are glucagon-like peptide-1 receptor agonists, treat diabetes when other forms of medication have not been able to successfully manage blood sugar levels. Some GLP-1 medications are also FDA approved for weight loss, such as semaglutide, which is used at Premier U, or liraglutide. These medications mimic the action of the hormone called the GLP-1, the glucagon-like peptide. This hormone is released in the gut when you eat. It affects areas of your brain that process hunger and satiety. It functions by improving glucose regulation, inhibiting appetite and food intake, and slowing gastric emptying. So the medications are very good for suppressing appetite, making you feel satisfied sooner when you're eating, and it definitely slows down your gut transit time. Macronutrients. Macronutrients are forms of energy that are measured in calories. They consist of carbohydrates, fat, and protein. They are considered essential, meaning your body either cannot make them or cannot go without them. Carbohydrates are the main energy source. Typically, about 50% of our intake alone should be coming from carbohydrates. Macronutrients have different forms of measurement to the calorie. So highest is fat at 9 grams, 9 calories per gram. And then protein and carbohydrates are pretty equal at about 4 calories per gram. The USDA dietary guidelines recommend the acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges for adults. So this includes a variance of carbohydrates between 45 and 65% of your daily intake, protein between 10 and 35%, and fat between 20 and 35%. These guidelines also recommend that adults get at least 130 grams of carbohydrates a day. Some main functions of carbohydrates include instant energy. Glucose is a preferred energy source for our brain, our central nervous system, and red blood cells. We store glucose as glycogen in the muscles and in the liver for later use, which we need for energy, typically during times of fasting or if there's times where we're not getting an adequate calorie intake. Fiber, which is a form of a carbohydrate, promotes regular and healthy bowel movements. Fiber also and carbohydrates from complex forms also help us feel full longer. Carbohydrates can be simple or complex. Complex carbs are the most beneficial. They provide fiber, they're less processed and refined, they take longer to digest, and therefore promote blood sugar and insulin balance. Simple carbohydrates are refined versions of complex carbohydrates. They are more processed and often lose their nutritional value primarily by reducing fiber content and adding sugar. They break down quickly in the body and can increase blood sugar levels. Sources of complex carbohydrates are things like brown rice, quinoa, farro, couscous, barley, whole wheat or whole grain breads, fresh or frozen fruit, starchy vegetables like potatoes, corn, squash, legumes such as beans, lentils, and peas, and dairy products such as Greek yogurt and milk. Refined carbs are more processed versions, so white rice, white bread, pastries, baked goods, cakes, pies, cookies, candies, chips and crackers, French fries, fruit juice and canned packaged fruit, and sugary cereals. The focus is on consuming fiber from complex carbohydrates and reducing the intake of simple refined carbohydrates. Simple refined carbs should be kept in moderation and not consumed regularly. Monitor portion sizes. The average portion size is the size of a tennis ball or my fist. Complex carbs or fiber should be consistent in the diet and consumed with each meal and snack. The focus on fiber from whole grains, fresh or frozen fruit, and fresh or frozen vegetables is key. Protein. Protein is composed of amino acids, which are the building blocks for life. It is a crucial nutrient that plays a vital role in the structure, function, and regulation of the body's tissues and organs. It builds and repairs tissues, including muscles, bones, skin, and hair. And it is involved in the production of enzymes, hormones, and other molecules that are essential for various bodily functions. It can be found in both plants and animals. Lean and anti-inflammatory forms of protein are recommended. Anti-inflammatory sources include fish, primarily fish that swims versus fish in a shell, such as salmon, tuna, mackerel, trout, halibut, herring, and sardines. Legumes, which are beans, lentils, and peas. Nuts, nut butters, seeds, and seed butters. Eggs, Greek yogurt, and fortified plant-based milk. Plant-based versions would be the legumes, the beans, the lentils. Mushrooms are also plant-based protein. Soy or minimally processed soy products, such as tofu or tempeh, and then nuts or seeds. And then lean forms of protein. So white meat, poultry, baked and broiled, not fried. Fish, venison in smaller portions, but venison is lean. Pork, but the loin cuts are leaner, typically the tender loin cut. Beef, so ground beef, it would be like a 90, 95, or 97 for fat-free content of ground beef, loin cuts, or chuck. Eggs, the whites are leaner than the yolks. And then milk, yogurt, and cheese. The average adult needs between 0.8 and 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. This is adjusted based on medical history, health status, and physical activity. So although this is a very general kind of broad recommendation for adults, this obviously changes. Primarily, it increases if you are on a GLP-1 or you are attempting to lose weight. If you are restricting calories, the macros shift and you need more protein to compensate for the loss of the calories. However, protein in general intake is overestimated pretty frequently. So just be mindful that yes, you need increased needs, but this is a very basic general starting point. Aim for lean protein at every meal and snack. 3 ounces is a serving. This is similar to the palm of your hand, a deck of cards, or a computer mouse. Focus on trying to consume anti-inflammatory sources of protein more frequently. So ideally, fish 3 times a week. Red meat, which includes beef and pork, would be once a week. Poultry, so turkey and chicken, sits neutral for inflammation, so that fills in the gaps. Or plant-based proteins are also a great way to get more anti-inflammatory protein. For nutritional balance, aim for fish 3 times weekly and red meat no more than once a week. Fill in with poultry, eggs, and plant-based options. Prepare food baked, broiled, grilled, or air fried. Try to limit food fried in oil or margarine or butter. Fat. Fats are broken down into fatty acids and glycerol. The main functions of fat or lipids include cell membrane health. They are an essential component of cell membranes and brain function. Fat is stored around your body, serves as a protective layer that can be used during periods when you consume inadequate calories. Lipids help transport and promote the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, such as vitamins E, A, K, and D, and it insulates and protects our organs. There are different types of dietary fat. These include saturated fat, trans fat, unsaturated fat, broken up into mono and polyunsaturated sources, and then omega-3 fatty acids. Fat intake is essential for the body to function, and at least 25 grams of fat a day should be consumed. Focus on intake of healthy or beneficial fat from omega fatty acids and unsaturated fat. Limit intake from saturated fat and try to avoid trans fats. Trans fats are primarily found in processed foods or ultra-processed foods, baked goods, things that are using a lot of butter. You really want to keep that limited. Ideally, daily fat intake should be on average around 30%. That is split equally between saturated fat, polyunsaturated, and monounsaturated sources. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential. They play an important role in cellular function. They maintain heart and brain health, kidney function, and eye and skin health. Sources of omega fatty acids include fish, primarily salmon, tuna, and sardines, nuts and seeds, primarily walnuts, almonds, hemp, pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds, flax or chia, avocados and avocado oil, olives and extra virgin olive oil. Be mindful of how it's processed. Cold keeps the most nutrition, or cold pressed keeps the most nutritional value. Expeller pressed is better for longevity. Edamame, and then seaweed or algae. And for anybody who's concerned or has heard about the methylmercury levels that come from fish, primarily salmon, tuna, and sardines, the fattier fish, that is why it is recommended to keep it at 3 servings per week to not overconsume methylmercury. The ideal population for that, though, are children and women of childbearing age. They're a primary target for the methylmercury contamination. If you are not in that population group, it's not as significant, but you should still monitor the intake. It is important to focus on combining fiber and lean protein with every meal and snack to promote satiety and blood glucose control. Remember, fiber comes from whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables. Choose both soluble and insoluble forms of fiber for the best regulation. And if you are consuming fiber from whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables, you will be consuming both soluble and insoluble forms. Lean protein, so fish, white meat, poultry, or turkey. Eggs, the whites are leaner than the yolks. Reduced fat dairy products. You do not have to do fat-free. They're typically more processed and can add more sugar. Nuts or nut butters, legumes. So again, beans, lentils, peas, edamame, soy products, and then mushrooms. Be mindful of processed plant-based alternatives such as Beyond Meat, the Impossible burgers. They're still very processed and not necessarily better for you with the addition of the fat and the sodium. So be mindful, those should also be kept in moderation. Also, several comboed options for ways to satisfy the fiber and lean protein snack combinations. So things like fruit and nuts, fruit and nut butters, fruit and cheese, vegetables and hummus, crackers and cheese or peanut butter. A good whole grain cracker is a Triscuit. There's only 3 ingredients in it and they're whole wheat. So usually that's, if you like crackers, I typically recommend Triscuits as a good option. Hummus is also on here, a great option, but be mindful. There's a lot of flavors of hummus out there, and some of them can add extra sodium that isn't necessary. So please read your nutrition labels and be mindful of the dessert hummus as well, because it's just adding more refined sugar. More examples of good snack options. So whole wheat English muffins. Remember that half of a muffin is a serving. When you have bread or buns or English muffins, 2 sides is 2 servings. Okay, so 1 slice of bread would be a serving, half of a bun, half of a muffin. There's the Triscuits with an ounce of cheese. Plain Greek yogurt with a cup of berries. Watch yogurt, there can be a lot of added sugar in it. So pay attention to your nutrition labels. Plain is best because it's not adding the sugar. If you don't like that more bitter taste of Greek, you can sweeten it up with some fresh fruit or even just a tablespoon of honey, agave nectar, or pure maple syrup, which are natural forms of sugar if you're keeping it minimalized. There's your fruit and cheese or your nuts and nut butters, carrot or celery sticks, or cucumbers with hummus, cottage cheese with fruits or vegetables, or an egg with a banana. Ideally, this is what your plate should look like at your meals. Half of your plate should be non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of it your protein, and a quarter of it your starch or your grain. Be mindful of the plate size as a whole. If you want to watch portion size, eat off of a salad plate or an appetizer plate versus a full-size dinner plate. Physical activity. Physical activity is beneficial for a multitude of health factors. It is one of the most important actions that people of all ages can take to improve their health. It fosters normal growth and development. It can make people feel better both mentally and physically by improving overall function, sleep, and mood. Regular physical activity can reduce the risk of a number of chronic diseases. Adults should move more and sit less. Any movement throughout the day is better than none. I hear a lot of people say they have chronic pain issues and they're unable to do a lot of heavy movement, primarily like cardio or heavy weightlifting. Walking is completely beneficial. There's nothing wrong with it, and it is still moving. So even if you can walk in even smaller increments of time, that is going to be more beneficial than being sedentary. For substantial health benefits, adults should do at least 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity, or 75 to 150 of vigorous or high intensity activity, see a bigger benefit. So moderate intensity activity would be activity to where you would be somewhat short of breath. It would be hard for you to hold a conversation while you're exercising, but you could do it. Vigorous or high intensity activity, you're not likely going to be able to talk or have a conversation because you're focusing on your breath. The intensity of the activity can be combined. So you can do moderate one day, you can do high, or even like HIIT classes, which are high intensity the next day. Doing moderate intensity activity, this can be broken down into 5 days a week for 30 to 60 minutes. Doesn't even have to be every day. Just getting in that 30 to 60 minutes 5 times a week meets those guidelines. If you're doing vigorous or high intensity activity, this can be broken down into 3 days a week for 25 minutes or 5 days a week for 30 minutes. Preferably, physical activity should be spread throughout the week and should be done in intervals that work best for your lifestyle. Additional health benefits are gained by engaging in physical activity beyond the equivalent of 300 minutes per week of at least moderate intensity. Just remember the box where it says best for workouts that are best for your lifestyle. It has to work for you. Finding the right time of the day and prioritizing it into your schedule is key to actually get it done. There can be a lot of times where things come up during the day, our plans change. Now we've lost the opportunity to get to the gym. Sometimes I recommend doing it first thing in the morning, so you've knocked it out of the way and there's nothing left to take that over or change your plan for the day because it's already done and taken care of. Or breaking it up into increments. Before you go to work, take a 10-minute walk. While you're at work on your lunch break, take a 10-minute walk. When you get home from work, take a 10-minute walk. Park further away in a parking lot. Take the stairs versus an elevator or an escalator. Find more ways to just keep the movement going. Even those feet pedalers that you can put underneath your desk are great because you're constantly moving, even if you're sitting. Adults should include strength training activities of moderate or greater intensity at least twice a week. Strength training exercises should include all major muscle groups. Adults with chronic conditions or symptoms should be under the care of a healthcare provider to minimize injury or harm from certain medical conditions. Ideally, if you have a history of any heart issues, you definitely need to have clearance from a doctor first before you start an intense physical activity routine, especially if you're going from sedentary to more active. You just want to make sure things are safe and that your heart can handle the increase in the activity. Strength training helps reduce the risk of losing lean muscle mass, which is critical to prevent illness, fatigue, chronic disease, deconditioning and debility, and malnutrition. Strength training helps build lean muscle mass, which in turn increases your resting energy expenditure or your basal metabolic rate. So basically, if you are doing strength training and building up your muscle, it will be easier for you to lose weight. That baseline energy need that you need for your body to function will increase. So it increases your metabolism. So it helps with the weight loss. It is also very pertinent that you're doing strength training when you are losing weight and on the GLP-1s, because those medications can sometimes make you lose your lean muscle mass a little bit easier than if you were not on them. And we want to make sure that weight loss is coming from fat and not from muscle. Strength training exercises can include a multitude of forms of exercises. This can be things like resistance bands, cable machines, free weights, body weight, and functional circuit training. It is beneficial to understand the correct exercises for your body. Meeting with a personal trainer, a certified fitness instructor, or a kinesiologist can help ensure you are doing strength exercises safely to prevent injury and be able to maximize muscle growth. So overall, optimal nutrition and adequate energy intake is vital to ensure weight loss efforts are not sabotaged by undereating or overeating. I want to emphasize this. Those medications primarily GLP-1s, but also other medications that are used for weight loss. The sole purpose is to suppress your appetite, right? Create early satiety, wanting to be done with meals sooner. It is pertinent that you are getting in that minimal amount of calories to meet that basal energy expenditure. If you do not, we go back to the beginning of the presentation where I talked about how our body starts to store energy because it's not getting it in adequately, naturally, like by eating it. So you can sabotage weight loss efforts if you are not eating enough calories because your body is going to start storing them instead of burning them. The focus of consuming fiber and lean protein together for each meal and snack is important to promote satiety and blood glucose control. You should aim for 25 grams of fiber per day, coming from a mix of whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and try to consume at least 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. This can be fresh or frozen. Try to avoid canned, but if you need to, rinse it off in a strainer. It'll help remove up to 30% of the sodium by just rinsing it off. Keep protein lean and anti-inflammatory. Remember, fish 3 times a week, red meat once a week, poultry like white meat, chicken and turkey, you can fill in besides plant-based proteins, so nuts, nut butters, legumes, and mushrooms. Try to consume at least 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. If you're wondering how to calculate this, it is your weight in pounds divided by 2.2 will give you your weight in kilograms. Remember that energy needs are specific to the individual. If you desire personal recommendations, a registered dietitian can help. That's what I'm here for. I can assess those needs for you so they're individualized to you to help with the weight loss goals. Consume healthy fats daily coming from fish, nuts, seeds, and avocados. GLP-1 use can assist with reducing visceral body fat, but can also increase the loss of lean muscle mass if you're not following a balanced diet or getting in regular exercise, primarily the strength training. It is pertinent to do strength training when trying to lose weight on these medications, as it promotes the loss of fat and prevents the loss of muscle. In conclusion, if you have any questions or concerns regarding your health and your weight loss goals, please reach out to anyone in your team at Premier U. We are here to support you and offer the best care we can for you to be able to meet your goals. Have a wonderful evening.
Megan, that was great. I think it was such a relevant topic as, as people who start taking these drugs, a lot of times we hear is, I hear the lean muscle mass, how do I exercise? Oh, cardio is, not enough. You hit on that really well, but it doesn't mean going to the gym and lifting those big weights that we're so intimidated by. I love that you gave some real examples that, anybody can do. We can pick up a few pieces and start at home and start small, even if you're too intimidated to go to the gym. But one of the questions I know that comes up a lot, I'd like to start with is that, you talked about how these medications can take that hunger away, right? That food noise that we talk about. So it's so oftentimes that people just forget to eat, right? And you're talking about getting your proteins in, you're talking about all these things, but they're not thinking about it because these medications are not, reminding us that it's time to eat. So if in a go-to situation, right, I know you had some, you had some snack ideas on there. Would you recommend, checking in with your body every, 2 to 3 hours and maybe eating some of those high protein snacks? What would you recommend though, as maybe people are being more forgetful about eating because we don't have those hunger cues?
So I would say if you are someone who likes if it's easier to not eat so much at once, which when you're on the medication, you're not going to be able to. It will start to make you sick and you're not going to feel well if you're overeating. Then yes, small frequent meals is the key. It doesn't have to be a full meal, but some sort of substantial snack. Okay. I don't mean snacks like grabbing a handful of chips. That doesn't really count. It needs to be a substantial snack. So it has to meet the macronutrient balance with the fat, the protein, and the carbs. I would advise to not go over 5 hours without eating. That's at about the point where the body, especially if you're someone who has underlying issues with blood sugar control, like diabetes or pre-diabetes, that's the point when the body really needs carbs for energy. And if you're not getting the intake in, your body's going to signal the liver to release the glucagon, which is going to release insulin to break down that, because that's a form of sugar. And then your blood sugars can increase and you've eaten nothing. So then you're like, why are my sugars high and I didn't eat anything? Well, that's exactly why, because your body's using its natural storage to give yourself the energy that it needs. So definitely don't wait, don't go longer than 5 hours without eating. Sleep time is different, but this is during wakeful times of the day. But yes, if it's easier to do small, frequent meals every 2 to 3 hours, if you are doing 3 meals a day and you're trying to find a way to not snack, if you're a big snacker, remember there's nothing wrong with a snack. They can be very beneficial for two reasons. One, if you have a long gap of time, you want to make sure you're getting something in to prevent yourself from overeating at the next meal. Sometimes if we wait too long and now we're so hungry, it's very difficult to be able to make a mindful food choice and keep our portions under control. So snacks are very beneficial for that reason. And again, focusing on the fiber and the protein, because that's what's going to make you feel satisfied and full sooner.
And another, just a follow-up question on that, you were really helpful in talking about looking at those labels, because you might think something's good for you. Like a great example you used is a Greek yogurt, right? Maybe doing, plain, adding the honey, the berries, but kind of watching away from those ones that kind of add that extra sugar on there. They're so easy to do. So with that, sometimes, it's great to have a on-the-go snack. Maybe if you're someone who, has a job that's always moving, those sort of things. If someone's going to eat maybe like a protein bar or like a protein shake, there's so many things out there. But as you indicated, there's so much sugar and other things in that we may not realize until we look. Do you have some recommendations maybe on what a good on-the-go snack would be, such as a protein bar?
So I would say better protein bars would be, definitely watch your ingredient list. The shorter the items in the ingredient list, the better the food is. Okay. If there's like multitude of ingredients and you don't know what half of them are, you probably shouldn't be eating it. Better brands, also be mindful of the sugar, because a lot of the protein bars do have a lot of added sugar. Cliff bars are one that take some fault for that. Like there's a lot of organic products in a Cliff bar, so they sound really good, but they have a lot of cushion on them. And if you actually look at the nutritional value, there's a decent amount of sugar and not really enough protein to match the amount of sugar that they're putting into the bar. I like the Kind protein bars, not a general Kind bar, but specifically the Kind protein bars. They are better balanced for their fiber to protein ratio. Nugo is another brand. They have good protein bars. They have a slim bar, which is a little bit lower in calories, which can sometimes be better. They are also naturally vegan. So if you're following a plant-based diet or have any food allergies, they may be a safer item as well. Those can be found at Deerberg's or Fresh Time. They sell them individually there. So if you don't want to buy a full box because you don't like the flavor, I usually recommend starting at one of those grocery stores because you can buy individual bars. But Nugo is good. There's a brand called Think. Those are decent. The Luna protein specifically are okay. The regular Luna bars have a little too much sugar in them. And then anything that would be more of like a reputable like supplement brand, like Orgain also has protein bars. Those are okay, or One bars.
Okay. Yeah, those are great suggestions. Another question, can you talk about milk? There's so much about, as growing up, I don't know about the rest of the group, but, you would get a big glass of milk and you were told to finish your milk before leaving the table. I don't know if that resonates with anybody else, but there's so many changes now when you go to the grocery store. Let's say Deerberg's, for example. There's soy, there's almond milk, there's oat milk. Why are there so many different milks now? And is it healthier and better to go towards more of a almond or a oat milk?
I think it depends on what you're looking for. So if you want to typically follow a plant-based diet, by all means, you don't have to have dairy. I know it's a food group, but it's not really a food group. We don't need dairy. We need calcium and we need protein. We need the nutrients that come from it. We don't actually need dairy. So if you're going to do regular cow's milk, I usually say stick to the middle, like 1 or 2%. Whole milk, yes, is less processed, but it does obviously have more fat and calories to it. Skim milk is more processed. It's going to have less calories and fat, but the processing of it isn't really beneficial either. So just kind of sticking mid-range with milk. Fairlife milk can be a good option. There's also organic versions, like Horizon also makes ultra pasteurized milk. So ultra pasteurized milk automatically decreases the sugar in the milk and increases the protein. So the ultra pasteurized milks can be a little bit of a better option as well. When we talk about plant-based milks, they're definitely not all the same. So if you want to keep calories down, aim for almond milk, like an unsweetened version of almond milk. You don't have to count carbs on that. It is minimal carbs. There's about 30 to 35 calories per cup, but there's also minimal protein, usually about 1 to 3 grams. Oat milk is great because it keeps a creamy consistency. So it's good for like coffee or baking, but it's coming from a grain. So it's also not going to be the highest in protein and it's going to be a little bit higher in calories and carbohydrates because of that. Then you have like soy milks and pea protein milks. Those sit you right in the middle. Pea protein is actually going to give you the most protein per cup portion. Soy also is higher in protein. I know some people don't want to overdo it in soy. There's some contraindication, and if you consume too much soy, it increases your because of the phytoestrogens in soy, it increases your estrogen. You really have to consume a lot of soy products for that to happen. But if you are mindful of that, if you have a history of any sort of hormonal cancer and you're definitely being more mindful of soy products, you can pick a different product. And then I would go to pea protein. And pea protein is typically used for fortification in any plant-based protein supplement. Or you can do blends of milk where you're getting all of those blended together in one option. So Califia, they have an option called Califia Complete. It's actually made from different forms of legumes. I think there's fava beans in there, and I don't remember what the other beans are right now. And then there's some pea protein in there as well. The Silk brand, the protein line. So they now have like an oat protein or an almond protein. That one's a little bit better because it's fortified with extra pea protein to give it a little bit more protein balance. So really just what are you looking for with the plant-based milk? Do you want low calories? Do you want the protein? Do you want the creaminess? It's you can't really get it all from everything, but just whatever you need at the time. But they're all going to have calcium. They're all going to have nutrient value. Again, trying to find ones that have the least amount of ingredients, the least amount of processing done to them, that's going to be better.
Yeah. I like what you said too, though, about it's the calcium and not the dairy, right? Because I mean, I think we'd agree that it's the thought of what balanced nutrition and what we need has changed over the years. And these conversations are always important because we learn as we go, and there's so many products out there. And you've made a really great point this tonight of just again paying attention to what you're consuming. Just because it's in a pretty package or it says it's whatever it is, we really have to be educated and have that information. Any other questions that the group may have? I know we've covered a lot of information from proteins to good fats. I definitely think the lean muscle mass is something that's always, coming up as we're, when we're starting to lose weight, that we're paying attention to that muscle mass. That's why we use the M-Body here at Premier U, because it's not just about the weight. It's also about the muscle mass in all of our limbs, and then our visceral fat, which Megan, you talked about as well, is, what is that level and where is it as we use these medications and hit our weight loss goals. Give a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions dropped in the chat.
Just an FYI, though, about packaging. Food packaging is extremely misleading. I have seen bread, that this is a big one, where it clearly says on the package, whole wheat. And if you read the ingredient list, it's enriched wheat. So it is pertinent to make sure you're reading your nutrition labels and your ingredient list. Do not just go off of the packaging. When we're finding whole grain or whole wheat breads, it doesn't have to be wheat. It just needs to be a grain in its whole form. Ideally, it's going to be wheat unless it's gluten-free, but making sure when you're looking at that ingredient list, the word whole is in front of the word wheat. If there's a different word in front of it, it's likely not whole wheat bread, even though the packaging tells you it is.
That's great information. Well, definitely, Megan, I thank you for your expertise and the information you provided today. As we said when we started, these are series that we're going to offer, each month. We'll have different topics, so please watch for in your email blast and also in office. Get a list of our upcoming topics and dates. We have those scheduled through December. We'll definitely have those into 2025. If you really liked what you heard today and you want to have a deeper discussion with Megan about maybe your dietary needs and what you need personally to have that individual approach, definitely call the main number, call the office, press 1, to schedule an appointment. And Miss Karen Joe would be more than happy to get you an appointment with Megan and talk about what you personally need. Definitely thank you for your time. One more plug is that we are hosting the M Factor. We're just shredding the silence on menopause. One of the things here we talk about weight loss. The other thing is hormone optimization. Aging is not easy, but it shouldn't be painful, ladies. And so we are going to be bringing the video or the movie to the Lincoln Theater on November 7th. Megan's also going to be in our panel, our star-studded panel, to talk about all things menopause when it comes to diet. We're going to talk about workout. We're also going to talk about sex, mental health, all the things that kind of surround that. So please join us. You can go to our Facebook page and see the link there and get your free ticket. You do have to reserve. Bring your girlfriends for a night of empowerment and just have a good time. And let's really it's more than a movie, it's a movement, and let's make change together. So thank you so much. And again, thank you, Megan, for helping us tonight.
You're welcome. Anytime.
All right. Take care. Good night, everyone.
Good night.